to our webinar today entitled Engaging Minority Males in a STEM Network Improvement Community. My name is Cindy Zeiker from SRI International, and I will be the moderator for this presentation. This webinar will highlight the work of our NSF INCLUDES funded project called Early STEM Engagement for Minority Males through a network of minority serving institutions, or ESEM for short. Today we will share information about our ESEM working groups, which were developed as part of a research and learning community of practice. We hope this webinar will serve as an invitation for you to join one of our working groups and become part of the ESEM network improvement community. Next slide. Our agenda today includes an overview of the ESEM project and then presentations by our STEM content working group, mentoring working group, and parent engagement working group, followed by a presentation on newsletter engagement and time for questions. And now for our overview of our ESEM project. To begin, some might ask, what is NSF INCLUDES? NSF INCLUDES is an initiative of the National Science Foundation that is focused on using social innovation to build a diverse STEM workforce to ensure continued U.S. leadership in research. INCLUDES promotes the use of social innovation approaches such as collective impact, networked improvement communities, and strategic partnerships. This effort involves the use of design and development launch pilots, which can scale to form alliances that will be supported by a coordination hub. The initial round of funding for launch pilots was in 2016, and the ESEM project was one of the first 40 projects selected. About 27 additional launch pilots were selected in 2017. 5 alliances were funded as of September 1st, 2018, and the Coordination Hub contract was awarded to SRI International. Next slide. The ESEM project is a partnership that includes Horizon Innovative Learning Program, historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, funders, business partners, experts, and researchers. Together, we are building a networked improvement community to address STEM achievement in minority males. This pilot received initial funding through INCLUDES with co-PIs at 4 minority-serving institutions: Dr. Kemi Ladaji-Ozias at Morgan State University, Dr. Kamal Ali at Jackson State University, Dr. Clay Gloucester at North Carolina A&T University, and Dr. Derek Gilmore at Kansas State University. Myself, Cindy Zeiker at SRI International, is a co-PI who serves as a mini backbone for this project. Next slide. ESEM was funded in the fall of 2016 and hosted a face-to-face NIC workshop at Morgan State University in the spring of 2017. Since then, the project has developed 3 working groups that are working and learning together around ways to increase the success of minority males in STEM. And you can see our journey map here that provides a timeline for our progress. Next slide. One of the products that was developed by stakeholders at the Morgan State workshop is a driver diagram that specifies an aim statement, primary and secondary drivers, and change ideas that can be tested to determine if they move the needle toward improvement. Our aim statement is focused on improving STEM outcomes for middle school minority males. Next slide. The Carnegie Foundation for Advancement of Teaching developed this visual that describes how a networked improvement community can test change ideas through the use of a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, or PDSA. PDSA is a 4-step model for designing and testing changes within a given system. Each of the ESEM working groups in the ESEM project is using the PDSA model for testing change ideas. Next slide. This template provides a working template for each working group to design and develop a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle around their own unique aim statements. Next slide. We would like you to join our working groups and learn more about the ESEM project by visiting our ESEM INCLUDES website located here at this address. Participation in the work groups includes attending monthly virtual meetings and conducting improvement cycles on your campus. This picture depicts all of those participants at the Morgan State workshop in the spring of 2017, and would love to include you in our future work. Next slide. So to learn more about the STEM content working group, I'd like to introduce my colleague and the co-lead of the STEM content group, Tamika Bradley at Jackson State University. Dr. Bradley, I'm turning it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Good morning. The STEM content working group focuses on the primary driver comprehension of STEM content. And just as a brief overview of background, we've reviewed the literature and we've shown that middle school is a significant transitional time for student content interest in STEM and STEM careers. But we've also noticed through the literature that there are reported declining attitudes towards science in the middle school years. And that decline comes from early positive interest in STEM, but over the middle school ages, it diminishes or trickles away. And there's a correlation, a positive correlation between math interest and STEM interest. But somewhere along the middle school time, this interest starts to decline and students move away specifically in math and those STEM related careers. Current literature, though, supports STEM programming designed specifically to make math interesting and relevant to minority males in this middle school group, which would thereby enhance their performance in math and science. So our working group is focusing on content specifically in mathematics preparation. Next slide. So through some of our working group activities, the working group had some vigorous discussion on what we wanted the purpose of our collective works to go forward. What did we want our group to, what problems, excuse me, did we want our group to work on? We looked at what challenges we wanted to address as it related to STEM content, and we came up with a collective problem statement. Students do not have access to high quality STEM instruction, opportunity to make practical connections to STEM, or access to STEM tools. And so from all of our discussion, we were able to make a generalized problem statement for this group. Next slide. From there, we wanted to refine our problem statement or drill down a bit more to find out some specific areas that we could identify that led to our problem statement. And we did this through our root cause analysis using the STEM content fishbone diagram. So what you have really are the details from our discussions. And so we identified five areas that contributed to our problem statement. And they included lack of quality instruction or obstacles to STEM comprehension, limited exposure to STEM content in engineering, science, and advanced mathematics, the amount of time students use or see technology tools for application. We looked at opportunities, the limited opportunities for our students to make practical connections, and the lack of resources. If you notice the fishbone diagram, our first statement or our first root cause had multiple sub-content areas that we really wanted to dig down. We were able to identify a number of different issues with the lack of quality instruction to STEM comprehension. And because of that, we decided to focus on our first root cause, and we drilled down to a specific area of improving math instruction through professional development. So you all can take an opportunity to just look at some of those sub-content areas that contributed to the various root causes that we identified in STEM content. Next slide. As we continue to work, the working group with the focus of improving math instruction through professional development, we came up with an aim statement. The purpose of our group is to increase math comprehension through teacher professional development. And we've created a projected timeline to actually start our improvement cycle, which was spring 2019. And then we created a statement saying that we wanted to increase STEM comprehension in mathematics in a given VIL program through teacher PD in mathematics instruction. And we're hoping that our change process is going to directly impact teachers and students. Next slide. And so with that aim created in our root cause analysis, the specific idea that we wanted to look at testing was around student voice and student empowerment. And so we had some research that shows that there's a relationship between student empowerment and voice and comprehension. Students who feel valued and believe their voice matters have higher chances of succeeding. We also recognize as a working group that there's an equity issue and that oftentimes minority males seem or render invisible because their voices are not respected in STEM classrooms. So with that as a background, the aims of our PD are to make a case for why we need to create more voice and autonomy for our minority male participants and to examine our roles as educators or teachers in creating the voiceless student. And so we want to create tools and strategies to disrupt this narrative. And we planned on doing that. Examples of the PD included activities that boost voice and power sharing, activities around equity and relevant pedagogy. So those are just some activities that we've started to talk about. And how we want to implement this is to actually have this PD with our teachers at one of our VIL programs. And we want to implement these activities and tools or instructional strategies within our math session in our VIL activity. And we're going to use a pre-post test design by creating a student perception survey around their comprehension, and then a teacher perception survey around their skill sets in implementing the instructional strategies. Next slide. And so our next steps are now to identify the time, the logistics, the time, and the actual VIL meeting date for our group where we will have the PD for our teachers. And we wanted to discuss a little bit further funding and travel. But it's our hope that our working group can help us to enhance the tools and strategies that we want to use. And after testing, refine the model for replication. We want to try to find platforms for this cycle to be used or to be expanded throughout the group. And that's our working group activities for STEM content. Oh, our working group member institutions, I'm sorry. We have working group members from Hampton University, Georgia Gwinnett College, Morgan State, and Jackson State. And SRI as our backbone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bradley.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to a presentation by our mentoring working group, and I'd like to introduce Marquita McCulley, the Program Director for the VIL program at North Carolina A&T. Marquita, I'm turning it over to you. Marquita, I think we can't hear you if you have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but we have a little feedback, but that's good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
There's some feedback. Could you turn off your microphone on your computer?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. So our components of our mentoring focus group is to, one, provide strategies that promote growth mindset. So how do we go about building confidence perseverance and determination in our students through different things like team time with the mentors, exposure to new concepts, new things, and also helping engage them in different activities to build skill sets. We're looking at personal development, looking into the goal setting and career exploration. So a lot of kids are focused on, hey, I want to be an engineer, but do you know what's the education requirements to be an engineer? What is the work environment? What is the skill set and personality types that it takes for a specific career that the students are interested in, and how much money do they make? So helping kids find jobs, majors that align with their personality and skill sets, and helping them learn how to explore those interests. Also, we have an interest to increase interest in STEM careers. And we're looking into things such as STEM major exploration. So what are the different STEM majors available for students? What are the different STEM careers? And also, what is the business etiquette within the industry? So we'll discuss different activities that could be planned for students, best practices, and also strategies to get the best out of your student. Next slide. Alrighty, so some of the different roles of the mentors and the VIL programs across the nation. Mentors are used differently on different campuses, but these are the four major ones that we have seen and came across. So some of the mentors and students are instructors. They plan to implement different technology lessons and maintain a supportive and productive classroom environment using activities such as 3D, augmented reality, virtual reality, coding, and different things. Also, we've seen mentors serve as a teacher assistant. So they're in the classroom providing assistance to students and instructor, helping them collaborate with the instructors to monitor the development of the child and also to resolve any disciplinary problems or any concerns that may arise with students. We've seen mentors serve as team leads, and they supervise and actively participate with participants doing planned activities. So that could be an activity in the classroom. It could be a special activity such as a career panel or something like that. And they also plan to implement the recreation activities, and they are usually our frontier with building and maintaining good relationships with parents. We've also seen mentors serve as administrative assistants where they field communication with parents, staff, and stakeholders with the program on your campuses, and they also maintain different program records and arrange program logistics. Next slide. So when we look at some of our mentoring problems identified, we're still currently working on a fishbone in our PDSA Act. So looking at some of the problems that we have discussed for mentors, one was a lack of cultural awareness of the student population. So our mentors need to understand what is the background of our students. I think a lot of times when people think about young black males, they see single parent home or incarcerated father, but there's different complexities to the young black males, such as what types of young men they are. Are they an athlete? Are they an artist? Are they a gamer? Are they a nerd? Or just what type of student is this person? And then helping them develop different skills, different opportunities to help the students navigate family, school, and life dynamics. Also, we looked at the participants often have few positive role models, male teachers of colors, and exposure to minority professors. I can give an example as to one day I asked a student simply, I said, hey, buddy, do you ever see Mr. So-and-so pulling up, wearing his pants sagging? Because I asked him to pull his pants up. And he said, Miss McCulley, Mr. Brandon, that's the only dude I know that don't sag. So for him, it's just putting him and students like him around positive role models. We also found that the mentors lack professional development needed for the students that we serve. So looking at how to incorporate some mentoring trainings at the different campuses and different organizations that work with young minority males and trying to introduce them or work with them in the STEM field. We looked at the number of trained mentor for minority males is not sufficient to the need. So we have a lot of students, but we don't have trained male mentors or just mentors in general, not enough to serve the demand that we have. And the last thing, a lot of students are not on the grade level, speaking specifically to reading and math. So teaching mentors, we're going to look at teaching mentors. How do you teach, engage, and grow students at different learning abilities and learning levels? Next slide. All right, so some of the solutions that we identified in our conversations so far is to create specific trainings for students and staff. So to increase awareness, discuss some of the positions and expectations of your staff, what they should be doing, and what exactly that looks like when you're working with students and parents. Also, the recruitment of mentors. So providing some type of criteria. Are they interested? Do they have a passion for working with children? Are they a student or someone coming from a STEM background that would have that knowledge, that background knowledge that we're looking to expose these children for? And just do they have a passion for what we're doing? Also, looking at creating some meaningful and impactful opportunities to engage our students and to help teach our students, such as a college life panel, or such as having career conferences that might include engineers, pilots, game designers, whatever the students are interested in, and whatever we see fit that we should expose the students to. And also taking the students on field trips, taking learning outside of the classroom. So for instance, going to a college tour and viewing a marine biology department, or going to a NASCAR. If they're interested in sports, hey, NASCAR is 5%, it's less than 5% minority males, introducing them to Bubba Wallace or Wendell Scott, and then all the other careers that's associated with that career or with that industry. Next slide. These are some of our working group members, the institutions that is represented. That's North Carolina A&T State University, Jackson State University, Morgan State University, Georgia Gwinnett College, Kentucky State University, and the National Cares Mentoring Movement. We all collaborate to research and come up with the findings that's been discussed.
Thank you so much, Marquita.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to introduce...
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce the lead for our Family Engagement Working Group, who is also the lead for the ESEM project at Morgan State University, Dr. Kemi Ladaji-Ozias. Go ahead, Kemi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Cindy said, I'm Kemi Ladaji-Ozias at Morgan State University, and I'm in electrical engineering. So for the Family Engagement Working Group, we started with what we know from the literature, which is that parental involvement or family involvement can positively impact students' academic performance. Unfortunately, sometimes the families are not aware about what it means to be involved in STEM, what it means to be successful in STEM careers, and what academic requirements are needed and how early you need to start to be able to have a successful future in STEM. In addition, there are many stereotypes about STEM careers. Some of these stereotypes are positive, but there are also negative stereotypes of peer pressure that might impact students following through with their zeal to stay in STEM. And so one of the things our working group wanted to work on was to start to explore how we can increase STEM awareness among parents and other family members, and ways in which they can support students with that interest, and also address some of the underlying stereotypes. And our group, as with the other groups, has also worked under the dedication that the group members will determine what we want to work on and what kinds of things we want to implement on our campuses. As part of our initial work, we developed a problem statement that described our perception of what family engagement challenges existed. And so this statement says that parents lack clear communication, awareness, and understanding that allows them to build the trust and relationships necessary to engage their students in high-quality STEM programming and other available resources. So the kinds of resources that we were thinking of to lead to success in STEM included things like tutoring, translators, access to transportation, technology labs, professionals that would be able to guide them along the way. So one of the first things our group worked on was doing a root cause analysis and laying that out in a fishbone diagram so we could categorize what we saw as the challenges families were facing, and also start to drill down to what some of the root causes were for those challenges. So we identified 5 challenges: ineffective communication, lack of adequate access to transportation, unawareness of participation expectations, lack of program credibility, and limited parent accountability. And as you look at the fishbone, you see that one of the areas in which we identified that a lot of issues existed was ineffective communication. And that communication related to a number of things. The kinds of information that parents were being provided that allowed them to buy in to our programs and to understand the benefits for their children to participate, our ability to communicate effectively based on parent language or home language that's spoken, based on the literacy level of the family members, based on their access to knowledge of and access to STEM-related resources, and their awareness of STEM broadly. And so we also discussed several other things. Transportation came up as being significant, especially in the middle school years, and the high dependence on parents for transportation, or more urban areas, alignment between available transportation and the hours of the programs that are available. We also discussed some issues parents may have around awareness, understanding what the expectations are for programs that don't occur during the school day or within the walls of the school, understanding what the expectations are for student behavior and enforcement for programs that are not required, unlike school. We also talked about the importance of parent buy-in and the parent culture that through word of mouth they could say positive or negative things about their programs. And so based on our extended discussion, we decided to focus on continuous communication about our programs in order to impact parent awareness and student participation. And so based on that, the the work of our group continues. The members who have participated so far are from Cal State LA, the University of District of Columbia. We also had a participant from a professional organization, the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, and Kentucky State and Morgan State as well.
Thank you so much, Kimmy. With that, as you could see on the last slide, Cal State LA is a member of the Family Engagement Working Group. And as a use case to demonstrate how a PDSA cycle can be implemented, we'll now have a presentation by Dr. Jessica Morales-Chicas regarding newsletter engagement. So I turn it over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Cindy. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. So based on what was just presented in terms of parent engagement, we worked as a group to try to understand what are the best ways to engage parents in our program, especially across the 2 years or across the year that you're working with students. And essentially, one of the things we thought about was monthly newsletters, because that's a way that can develop constant communication rather than a single event, as an example. So we wanted to see, based on that notion, are newsletters actually effective? So on the right, we have just a sample newsletter that we typically give to students to then give to their parents. It involves things like dates and what the curriculum was about for the previous month and the current month, and then some news or special spotlights of the students. So our research questions essentially were, are students actually giving the newsletters to their parents? If parents receive the newsletters, how frequently do they actually read them? And then when they do read them, how much do they actually learn about what their child is doing? You can go to the next slide, please. So what we decided to do, this conversation occurred at the time of recruitment in the summer. So we had about 66 returning students and about 40 plus new students. So because the new students didn't have access to the newsletters yet, this survey was only conducted with the returning parents. And so for the first question, in the past monthly sessions, how many times do you recall receiving a parent newsletter? As you can see, about 21% never received the newsletter. But other than that, at one point, once, twice, or 3 or more times, parents actually did receive the newsletter. So what this told us is that most parents actually receive the newsletter than not. So this was reassuring for us. We then asked the parents, how many times have you read the parent newsletter we send to them? And part of why this question came about is because oftentimes we send things with the kids and then it never actually makes it to the parents, or the parents see it, but they don't actually engage and read the content. And what we found here is that the same parents who said they never actually read the newsletters were the same parents who said that they never received it. So clearly, when they actually received it, they were reading it, but the amount of frequency varied. Overall, the majority actually read the newsletter, so this was also reassuring for us in the fact that parents were not only getting the newsletter, but actually reading it. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. We then wanted to understand, are parents actually learning from what we put in the newsletter? In other words, is it effective in knowing what your child is learning? So here, what we actually see, again, the same 20% that were reported earlier were the ones who said, I never received the newsletter. So now this is our third way of triple checking to see if parents were not actually getting the newsletter, and the data replicates here. What we also see here is that very few people actually said it was not effective. The majority of people actually said that it was to a great extent effective or somewhat effective. So what we did next is we took out the 20% of the population of the sample that actually said that they never read it, just so that we can get representation of just those who read the actual newsletter. And what we found here, so you can see the same data from the pie graph. The only thing that's different is the 20%. So this now narrows our N to 52 rather than 65. If you could hit the next button, if you don't mind. And what we end up finding here with these new percentages is of those that actually were reading the newsletter, 94%, which I basically got by adding the number that said it it was somewhat effective and to a great extent effective. Of the sample who actually read the newsletters, found it to be effective or somewhat effective. And so these results suggested to us that the newsletter is an integral component of really keeping parents engaged about what their child is learning based on these different metrics. So we were really excited to know that parents are receiving it and parents are reading it and learning from these newsletters. However, it also taught us that, what about the 20% who are not? And this could be for various reasons. One of the reasons could be that, the kids maybe have been absent a few times and not actually getting a copy of the newsletter, which suggests that perhaps we can be emailing them out as well. This also tells us that perhaps the kids are not actually giving the newsletters to the parents, or maybe they're just choosing not to read them. So that's something of self-reflection that we're all needing to discuss next. But we wanted to share this data with you. This is something quick and easy that you can all implement it within your programs. We did this again during the orientation when we were having the returning kids and parents come back and check in with us. But I recommend all of you to try it. It's easy and it gives you some telling data. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next slide. Okay, and thank you so much, Jessica. That was very insightful, and it showed the simplicity but the power of having that kind of data and reviewing it for the purpose of improvement. So that is our presentation for today. We'd like to spend some time on questions, but what our purpose here really was to give an overview and an invitation for those of you who are interested to join our working groups. So this website that is on the screen again provides you a link to go straight to a form that you can fill out on our website, and we will contact you regarding what working group you are most interested in. There's a selection process for that. And once you select a working group to join, we will contact you with more information about that working group. As I said, there are expectations for working group members that include attending monthly virtual meetings, and those invitations will go out to you once you enroll in a working group. And as we just demonstrated, conducting improvement cycles such as the one on newsletters for family engagement is part of our work. And that is ongoing work that we will be continuing throughout the next year. So we really hope you will join us. And as you can see, some of the faces in this picture are the people you will be joining in our network improvement community. We are across the country. There's one person in this picture that I really want to acknowledge, and that is Phil Puthamana from the Verizon Innovative Learning Minority Male Program that funds the VIL program, as well as Kemi, who has done very much work in keeping this project right on track. So thank you, everyone. And now I turn it over to the audience to go ahead and ask questions. And please direct your question to either the working group lead or just as a general question to Dr. Kemi Ladeji-Ozias. Any questions? And remember to unmute yourself if you are on mute. Okay. I'm not sure that we see any questions in the chat, nor do I hear anyone with a question, but please feel free to email us if you do have a question following this webinar. We will be posting this webinar on our website for future review, as well as the slides will be on the website. So if you think of something that you need more information about that wasn't addressed today, please feel free to email us. My email is cindy.zeiker@sri.com, and we can provide a link to other emails if you ask. So thank you for your time today. We greatly enjoyed having you, and we greatly enjoyed the presentation. Thank you to all the co-leaders of the working group, and thank you to Dr. Ladeji-Ozias for arranging this webinar today.